Hey, welcome. Today, we're basically putting on our detective hats and jumping into a bit of a historical mystery. We're going to trace the really fascinating and kind of complex origins of one of Christianity's most core ideas, the Trinity. All right, so let's get right into it. The idea of one God, but in three distinct persons, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, it's a cornerstone of the Christian faith. But was it always there, right from the start? How exactly did we get from those early beliefs to this very specific, very complex formula? Well, that's the puzzle we're going to try and piece together. So before we dive back in time, let's just make sure we're all starting from the same place. When we talk about the Trinity, this is what we mean. One single divine substance, but existing as three totally equal and eternal persons. It's a super precise definition, and as you're about to see, getting to that level of precision was a wild ride. Okay, so our story doesn't start with a nice, neat, finished doctrine. Nope. It starts with a bunch of really powerful beliefs that the very first Christians were just trying to figure out. Think of them as the foundational pieces of a puzzle they hadn't solved yet. So what were these core beliefs? Well, there were three big ones. First, coming straight from their Jewish roots, was this rock-solid belief in only one God, monotheism. That was non-negotiable. Second, they worshipped Jesus as divine, as the Son of God. And third, they experienced the Holy Spirit as this real, powerful, active force right there in the world with them. And this is the heart of the problem they faced. You've got these three powerful beliefs. But how can they all be true at the same time? I mean, if you worship one God, but also believe Jesus is divine and the Spirit is divine, how do you avoid just creating three different gods? They had all the ingredients, but the recipe for putting them together, it just hadn't been written yet. And that created this huge theological tension that just had to be resolved. And that tension, well, it didn't just quietly resolve itself. It exploded into these huge, passionate debates that spread across the entire Roman Empire. It was a full-blown crisis, and it forced the early church to get laser-focused on defining exactly what it believed. This massive, complex conflict really came down to this one absolutely critical question. What is the exact relationship between God the Father and God the Son? Are they equals? Is one subordinate to the other? The answer to this was going to shape the future of Christianity itself. And this debate basically split into two major camps. On one side, you had a really popular priest named Arius. His argument was that, yeah, the Son is divine, but he was a created being. The Father's first and greatest creation, for sure, but not made of the same stuff, the same substance. His tagline was basically, there was a time when the Son was not. But fighting him tooth and nail was a bishop named Athanasius. He argued, no way, the Son is co-eternal with the Father. He was begotten, not made. And here's the key, he was of the exact same substance. The Greek word they used was homoousios. That one word was a huge deal. Now, this argument got so big and so heated that it was actually threatening to tear the Roman Empire apart. So, to fix this crisis, the Emperor Constantine stepped in. He, along with other church leaders, called for these huge official meetings, we call them councils, to hash it all out and vote on an official belief. And the two most important meetings, the real game changers, are right here. First, in 325, you have the Council of Nicaea. Its whole purpose was to settle this Arian debate. Then, look at this, more than 50 years later, another big meeting, the Council of Constantinople. They got together to double down on what Nicaea decided and to flesh out the doctrine even more. So you can see how this doctrine was really built piece by piece. First, at Nicaea, they took a side. They officially rejected Arius's ideas and came down firmly on the side of Athanasius, declaring the Son is of the same substance as the Father. Then, at Constantinople, they added the next layer, expanding their creed to say, hey, the Holy Spirit is fully divine too, putting the Spirit on the same level as the Father and the Son. And this line, this exact wording from the creed that came out of Nicaea, this was the solution. Begotten, not made, consubstantial with the Father. That was the final word on the matter. And that word, consubstantial, which just means of the same substance, that was the whole ballgame. It became the bedrock of official Christian belief for, well, ever since. So we've traced this whole journey, right? From these few core beliefs, through these fiery debates and history-making councils.
what's the big takeaway from all this? What's the bottom line?
Well, here it is. The doctrine of the Trinity, as it's formally defined, isn't something you can just flip open the Bible and find spelled out in a single verse. It's a doctrine that grew and developed over centuries. It was literally forged in the fire of debate, reflection, and full-blown crisis as thinkers tried to make sense of it all. And just to really let that sink in, we're talking about a process that took over 300 years. Think about that. From the time of Jesus and the first Christians to that final definitive statement at Constantinople, this was a long, messy, and often really contentious journey of ideas. And all of this leaves us with one last question to chew on. How does knowing the human story behind a doctrine, seeing the arguments, the personalities, the politics, how does that change how we look at that belief today? It's a really interesting thing to think about, that place where faith and history meet. Thanks for digging into this with me.